Hi, I'm Rahul Basu from The Future We Need, and I'm going to try to persuade you that the intergenerational equity principle must become foundational for our civilization or it will perish. What is intergenerational equity? This work actually began with a question that the Supreme Court had asked Goa Foundation's lawyer. Goa Foundation is an environmental NGO in India. And looking around the world, it turned out that it is a very simple idea. Children and future generations must inherit at least as much as we did. Ideally, of course, we would leave a bequest, a legacy of our own for them. But consider what happens if we consume a part of what we inherit and each generation consumes a little bit. Eventually, there's nothing left, and any civilization, nation, or any system actually that does not have a rule of maintaining its capital will eventually go extinct. So this is a rule which has deep survival implications and deep evolutionary significance. But the question came up in the context of iron ore mining in Goa. And here's what we found when we looked at who should be implementing intergenerational equity. So the owner of minerals in the planetary commons, most famously the deep sea minerals in international waters, are considered the common heritage of humankind. So this is all of humankind are considered owners of those minerals. Within nations, very often some level of government has ownership. This could be the national government, it could be a subnational government. In many places, indigenous peoples have certain kinds of sovereignty which may include ownership over minerals below the ground. And in the US and in pockets in India and in other places, you can have individuals as well as corporate entities that own minerals below the ground. So in the US, of course, mineral ownership goes with title to the land. So there about 2/3 of the US is owned by these kinds of entities, individuals and private entities. But in the case of Goa, it was clear that the Goa state owned the minerals. So here's what we did an analysis to see if intergenerational equity was being met, and here's what we found. Over an 8-year period, for every $170 worth of minerals that were exported, the cost of extraction and a reasonable profit for the extractor turned out to be 70. So the value of the minerals from the point of view of the owner, the state of Goa, was 100. When we looked at the budget, it turned out that the state of Goa received less than 5 out of this 100. Basically, loss of 95. And even worse, what happened with that 5? Government accounting and common sort of parlance calls royalties and similar mineral sale proceeds are called revenue. Revenue means it's really income which can be spent because next year we'll get something similar. So even that 5 is gone. So a full loss of 100. And this is not uncommon. IMF has done a lot of work which if you string a few of the reports together, if you start at the global level with 100 of inherited minerals, the best case is a loss of 15 to the extractor. In Goa's case, it was 95 instead. Then of that, if you lost 15 and received 85, approximately 1/3 gets consumed straight away. About 18 gets invested through the public sector, but of that investment, about half is actually wasted. And in more modern times, following the lead of Norway and other countries, you have financial sovereign wealth funds where about 30 gets invested. So if you start with 100, our children are inheriting 40, less than 40. They're losing 60 each time we're extracting at a global level. What is to be done? We've tried to explain intergenerational equity in 5 simple principles. Principle 1, natural resources, including minerals, are owned by the state as a trustee on behalf of the people and especially future generations. Principle 2, since we have inherited the minerals, we must make sure our children inherit either the minerals or their full value. Now we can leave the minerals as is and our children will inherit exactly what we did. But if we decide that we want to extract and sell the minerals, we must ensure zero loss. If the minerals are worth 100, we must receive 100. Fourth, whatever we receive from selling our mineral wealth, we must save for our future generations and invest it wisely. We are suggesting a global portfolio of low-cost index tracking funds. Financial theory tells us that this is an almost impossible benchmark to meet. And principle 5, we own the income, we own the minerals, we own the fund created from the minerals, we own the income of the fund, distributed equally to everybody as a citizen's dividend, a right of ownership. We benefit from the citizen's dividend today. Our children will inherit the minerals and the fund, and they will benefit from the income in their turn. Now, this framework for intergenerational equity can be extended to the environment also fairly easily. First, consider, why don't we just consume the planet? What are we trying to sustain and for whom? We're trying to sustain the productivity of the planet for future generations. That is really intergenerational equity. So intergenerational equity enables sustainability. And in forestry and fisheries, you have the idea of a sustainable yield principle where you can only use the harvest. You can harvest to the extent that it does not sort of lead to a collapse in that ecosystem. I just want to point out that sustainability is different from sustainable development, because first you have to be sustainable and only then can you actually consider development. Because if you have development in the process you are unsustainable, there's no guarantee that you're going to become sustainable at the end of the development period, and which is what we're seeing today, that we're consuming more than the productivity of the planet in the hope that we will reach a point where we can become sustainable. So anyway, we start with sustainability. Then you have strong sustainability, one branch of thought which says that natural capital cannot be substituted by anything else because we have no ability to create natural capital. And the answer in that case is no mining, because we cannot create minerals. But if we adopt the more mainstream approach of weak sustainability, which is the idea that we can extract some minerals and substitute it with other forms of capital, even there you have to first set aside critical natural capital. For example, the ozone layer, the low carbon atmosphere, oceans. In the case of Goa, the Western Ghats covers nearly 2/3 of Goa and basically gives life to Goa as well as the whole area of peninsular India because of the rain and that it creates. So that would be considered critical natural capital, where you apply the precautionary principle. Don't cause a catastrophe, don't even risk a catastrophe. And then finally, if you have some marginal extraction, then you can implement the mitigation hierarchy, which is avoid, mitigate, restore, offset. In all of these 4 cases, you end up back with the natural ecosystem you started with. But if you can't do that, then you compensate in cash, which is the polluters pay principle. Why is this important? If you think about it, future generations are entitled to the capital that has been inherited, but their political power is zero. The present generation has a right basically only to the usufruct, the productivity from that capital, which has to be divided between the poor and the rich, and of course the poor have lower power than the rich. But what is really happening is, instead of the poor demanding, imposing taxes on the rich for redistribution or other good uses like education or development, the poor and the rich are collaborating to take from future generations. We saw the case of minerals, but you can see the case with natural resources all over the planet. We're doing the same with the waste that we're generating. We're polluting the atmosphere, we're polluting the oceans. And you can even see this in the government deficit, because we've had a COVID crisis, and most of the governments, instead of actually raising taxes to fund COVID relief, they've preferred to borrow from the rich and providing benefits to the poor, but the bill will be picked up by future generations. So we're basically all colonizing the future, and this is unsustainable. This has to stop. Now, the idea of intergenerational equity exists in law in many areas, and actually not just in law. In accounting and economics, income is basically defined as a residual after you maintain capital. For families which want to last through generations, you have primogeniture, you have entails where sort of the inheritance has to be passed on, and the next generation actually has an enforceable right on that. Charities, of course, have endowment funds and waqfs where you keep the corpus of the principal whole and only use the income. Governments, as we just talked about, you have balanced budget sort of amendments, and we've moved from defined benefit pensions where politicians can just say, whenever you grow old, we'll give you so much money because he won't be around to pay the bill. We've moved to defined contribution pensions. And in the case of natural resources, we've just discussed minerals and how it can be extended to various kinds of minerals. But let's step back a little bit. Why is it so important? We can think of us as a series of nested systems, starting with biosphere at the top level, humanity as a subset of the biosphere, civilization as a subset of humanity, the various nations are subsets of civilization, and then within nations you have groups of various kinds, and finally you have individuals like you and me. Now, survival is the primary goal of each of these systems, and it's actually rarely stated, but if you think about like at the national level, you have an emergency when survival of the nation is threatened. Similarly, when Ostrom was looking at commons, her definition of success of a successful commons was a long-lived commons, one that has survived multiple generations. But if you think about it, in order to succeed itself, you must first survive. So intergenerational equity really is around, let's make sure we survive. Now, growth is the alternative way that you can actually survive. If you grow larger, you are better able to survive a pandemic or a famine. But when everybody at one level of systems, whether individuals or corporates or nations are trying to grow, they're basically competing with each other, and in the process, they are consuming capital, as we've seen, denying future generations the inheritance, and that in turn is threatening the survival of the higher levels system, which is civilization. We're all consuming to grow more powerful and improve our chances of survival, but the larger system is on the verge of collapse. Which is why we believe intergenerational equity must be foundational for civilization, or it will collapse. It must come ahead of growth. Thank you.